Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be doing a deep dive into JIRA Service Management on the topic of AI. We're going to be showing you today the virtual agent feature that was recently released and possibly a little bit of Rovo as well. We are recording today's session, so I'd invite you to take a rewatch if you'd like, share it with coworkers and so forth. We'll be emailing it out in a couple of days after today's presentation when we have it uploaded to our website. For anyone unfamiliar with StrataCom, I'm going to take a really quick minute to introduce our organization and then we'll dive in. StrataCom is a platinum Atlassian solution partner focused on JIRA Service Management. We've been doing enterprise ITSM consulting implementations, configurations since 1997 for large organizations across the globe. Today's topic is going to be virtual agent and AI. So a few of the things we're going to touch on will be intent templates, AI answers, analytics, and conversational interface. I would like to invite you to submit questions along the way. You can put them in the chat feature. We'll have Bill take a break from time to time to answer those questions. And we'll also leave it open at the end of our session for Q&A as well. You're also welcome to raise your hand if you'd like to ask questions live.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or actually afternoon for me here in Wisconsin. So just sharing my screen and we're going to just talk through all of the aspects of the virtual agent, what it is, how does it look, how does it work? So you get an idea of what are its capabilities as well as is this a good fit for me at this time? On a very basic level, you have to actually turn Atlassian intelligence on in a system. And we'll get into that in a minute. I've been working in the ITSM industry since I got out of college in 1994. So I've been doing this for 30 years and I've been through a lot of different verticals, a lot of different places. And this is one of maybe the most exciting things I've seen because the holy grail of customer support and IT service management is actually fulfilling self help, right? And we have all these tools we've had for years, like knowledge articles and wikis and everything. This is the first thing I've seen in a while that I think will really be able to push people to do self help. And we'll talk about that as we go through this. I've worked with BMC and Avanti and Sharewall and various others over the years. As anyone who's talked to me before or watched my demos knows, I'm a huge fan of Atlassian because they keep pushing out new features. Atlassian Intelligence was introduced at Team 23 in April or May of last year, and they've been pushing out different things with it throughout the year. So let's go take a look just at how it gets turned on. If you go to admin.atlassian.com and you go in here and you go to settings up on the top, there's Atlassian Intelligence. I have it turned on for all of my products in this demo environment, but by default, it is not turned on for you. You would have to go in here and turn it on. So that's the most basic beginning step for this. And as you can see, you can turn it on a individual product basis. So it doesn't have to be everything, but this enables the functionality. So this is step one for everyone. You just have to go in here, you pick your products and turn it on. Now, obviously I already have them turned on in here, right? So this has to be somebody with org admin privileges or site admin, possibly depending on how you're set up. Site admin's been deprecated in newer instances. Anywho, so what is the virtual agent? Let's just go take a look. So I'm gonna try to move it out of the way. But so if we go look at a portal, this is the standard portal, right? This is what everybody sees when you go into a portal on a default JSM system. We got sometimes some sticky knowledge. We've got our portal groups and some other things. So this HR project, if I go look at it, does not have the virtual agent turned on. But if I go look at my service desk project, I do have it turned on, right? So I get this new thing at the top, chat with virtual agent. So how does this work? Well, and keep in mind, we are on version 1 of this. This is just newly refreshed. So some of it's going to look basic, including the next screen. So I chat with the virtual agent. You can see it says beta down here, powered by Atlassian Intelligence. And I assume the screen will become customizable eventually. Right now, it's a very simple layout. And I'm going to be like, I need to set my password. And what it's doing right now is looking at something called intents. It's trying to figure out what am I actually trying to accomplish? Because I can ask that question almost in an infinite number of different ways. So it did successfully match this intent. So I'm going to say yes. It says, hey, it looks like you want to reset your password. You can do that by following the instructions in this wiki. Now, I've known many organizations that have a password reset tool. And the disconnect it's always between people knowing what they need and getting that information to them. And this bridges that gap. And I really like that. So, for example, when I was working with a state agency, if you needed to reset your password, they had a password reset tool. It was public facing, it was a public facing web page. You went to it, you put in your phone number, it then looked up, automatically who you were, if you were valid or not, and then texted you a one-time code. That's what I would do here in this link, but for the purposes of the demo, we have this wiki. It tells me what I need to do to reset my passwords. It's got these instructions, which are kind of, basic, but in real life, you'd have them to whatever your password reset tool is. Did it resolve my issue? I would say yes. It asks me to rate my support experience. I'll say 5. This list, let's scroll down the window a little bit. Essentially, this list has 4 in there. Again, it's in beta, so some things don't display perfect. I could add additional feedback here if I wanted. So how does this actually work? Let's go take a look. Go into my IT support project, go to project settings, and once I turn on that Atlassian intelligence at admin.atlassian.com, this should show up for you. Now, it may not be in all instances. This instance was relatively new and it did take a couple days for it to show up for me. As you can see, when I go into this virtual agent, I've got some settings. Let's go to the basic settings to start with. So right off the bat, I categorize what request type I want issues to come in as if they're created by the virtual agent. And we'll show that in a minute. I'm just going to generically categorize them all as get IT help. This Atlassian intelligence answers, I'm going to come back to in a little bit. And then I was talking about intents. So if we go look at our intents in here, I've got a few defined. Or take a look at reset password. So as I mentioned, Laura, Jack, and I might all say the different or might phrase a question different. And so I put in these 5 that I just figured out. If I was doing this in real life, I would go look at support tickets that actual people have registered, and I'd try to come up with probably 10 to 15 different ways they've asked this question. And then there's a training phase. You can have this live. During the training phase, it may or may not work. You do have to test it and train it. I've had some work immediately out the gate, and some needed a little more refinement. And then we've got some settings on here. So once it matches the intent, and if we look at the flow here, the match intent is the AI portion of this. It is using the training and the settings and what it can pick up from your issue data to match that intent. And once it does, it asks the question. You can see I've got a link in here to the wiki. I built this. This is a very simple one. And then it asks what, did it resolve the issue? Yes. Then it marks it as resolved. If I choose no, then it actually changes the request type from our default of get IT help to fix an account problem and escalates it, which opens an issue. And I can show you that pretty quickly. Build password wrong. Let's see what happens. So interestingly, it could pick up on that. I clicked the wrong thing. I actually intended to say yes on that. All right. It says, do you need to reset a password? I'm going to say yes. The wiki didn't help me. Did it resolve my issue? No, it did not. So now it created a ticket for me. That's great. All of the normal ticketing rules apply. I would get an email with the ticket. I would have, the ability to do everything I can with a normal ticket. Let's go take a look at this ticket. So I've got my customer view, and you can see it did change the request type to fix an account problem, right? So very straightforward, very easy to understand. And again, I really think this is something that eventually you'll be able to cut call volume. All right, let's do a little bit more of a complex one. Am I looking for corporate holidays? Yes, I am. state do I work in? Well, I work in California. Here's the 2024 or 2025 California holiday list. So there, it gives me all the information I know. Now, California does have a couple holidays, other states don't. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but I worked with the state of California for quite a while. So did this solve my question? Yeah, it did. Now, how did that work? We go back and look at our intents again and go find my holiday schedule one. So zoom out a little bit here. So it matched the intent, and that was based off of these items I put in. I could easily add more. And now it just gives me a choice, right? And I could have multiple choices. In this one, I just have two, but I could have five easily. So depending on which choice I chose California. It says, here's the list, gives me the link to the wiki. And do I need more information or help? And again, if I say no, then it resolves it. If I say yes, it creates a ticket. Easy and simple to understand. This tool in here is not real difficult to learn. There's all these different steps defined. So if we look at standard flows, you can see we greet, which is what happens after the intent is matched. Escalate creates an issue, resolve, close the conversation. Match intent is, of course, where everything starts. And then auto close is the only one that takes a little bit more explanation. So if somebody like walks away from their desk after a number of minutes, you can just close the conversation. So this is set to 5 minutes out of the box. It doesn't appear you can change that. I haven't even tested through that all the way before.
Yeah, we do have one that came in.
All right. So what is the upgrade cycle and is there a published roadmap for the virtual agent? The upgrades aren't really scheduled with Atlassian if you leave it in the default settings. If you are in Atlassian admin, there is the ability to schedule releases. Otherwise, Atlassian does micro releases all of the time. They will push features here and there just on their own schedule. If you go look up the product roadmap, those are all published. Laura or Jack, could you please look for the product roadmap links and drop them in the chat? And when they publish them, they'll usually say this will be going into your environment between September 1st and September 15th. I assume they have different data centers and they're pushing one data center at a time, but they don't actually divulge that for security reasons. So, all right. So if I can go into my settings, if this is turned on, the Atlassian intelligence answers, it will actually try to match your knowledge base as well as looking for intents. This is using the knowledge base that's included with JSM. There are permissions tied to that. So I may have an HR project with an HR knowledge base that I do not have access to. I could also have an IT project with an IT knowledge space that I do have access to. If I try to search for something using this, it's only going to search what I have permissions to search. So that said, let's take a look at that. Now, this is going to be a silly example, but I wanted it to be something just off the wall that would not ever be in here. So you can see I've got these intents in here. There's only 4 of them. Go back to my conversation. Well, before I do that. Okay, so if I go back to my conversation, I'll clear up the conversation. Don't know if we have any Doctor Who fans attending, but my TARDIS needs troubleshooting, right? So what it's doing right now is it's checking all the intents and it's saying, I don't see anything that matches this at all. So I'm going to go look in your knowledge base and see if there's something that matches. And as it turns out, I used AI to write this article. So it created this TARDIS troubleshooting and that worked pretty well, actually. I had right before this meeting, I had AI create a different thing that was seafood or suppliers of food. I had to reopen the conversation. Second. So I wrote an article in the knowledge base that was who are our food suppliers? And it did not work at that point in time because it's I don't know if it indexes or pulls, but there is a little bit of gap. So who supplies our food under contract? Now this I'm not expecting this to work, but it might. Okay, so this did not work 30 minutes ago when I created the article, but now it did. I was able to pick this up. I can go look at the food suppliers we have. If it can find an intent, it will search the knowledge base and go through it. Now, there are a couple of settings that play into this if you're working on this. So, first of all, in addition to turning on this Atlassian intelligence down here, you have to make sure, and remember I said the permissions matter in your project settings under knowledge base. You have to make sure this is set to allow all login users and service project users. By default, at least in the one Atlassian environments, it is set to this, and then it will not work. One other point, you cannot change this here until you go into products, go down to service management, go to knowledge base permissions, and turn this on. But once that is set up, it will search the knowledge like I just showed you. All right, so how do we create a new intent? Go back into my project settings. Now, Atlassian has created some templates for us, like they have in many places. And you can see I've got these 4 in here. 2 of them are live, 2 of them are not. It's interesting because the keyboard request one, which I have not made live yet, actually bridges the gap between knowledge and the other things. So if I was to go look at this one, I could actually test it from here before it's live and go into the conversational portal. Tells me I'm in test mode. I can say my keyboard is not working. So this actually it did not match the intent that I have defined at this point. And it actually, you can see it answered by intelligence, which means it went to the knowledge base. So this one needs some more revision before it's ready for prime time. If I go back and look at the training and the settings, got all of these in here, but it's just didn't work that well. If we create a new one, like I was saying, back to intents, and we create the intent, I do have a number of templates that come up, right? So this list has actually grown substantially in the last week. I think there was 7 or 8 when I first did this. I'm going to choose VPN. Use this template. I'm going to hit next down here. And it gives me quite a few different ways of stating this question, like that I'm having trouble with VPN. Obviously, all of them have the term VPN in them, but I'll go ahead and create this. So the portion it does do is giving me all of my training on here, all of these suggested settings that came out of the template. The portion it does not do is the flow, right? And if I had a VPN troubleshooting article, I would have to manually link it in here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So it starts at matching the intent. So if any of those training things I said were there, I would then say, you know, go over here and be like, it looks like you want help with VPN. To set these things up, and go ahead and offer a choice between here. Is that correct? Some offer choices. They don't see the title on top. It says that, but and then I could also link to an article in here. That's pretty simple. I would simply go like that and then drop in my link. Right. Okay. I'm getting through this material faster than I expected. So let's talk a little bit about if I was implementing this at a customer, and I have actually at least one customer online, how would I do it? Like, where would I start? Where I would start personally by going in and doing some reporting. I'd probably go into filters, go look at all of my open issues, and just look at what has been the biggest items we've had. Reporting might work better, but I happen to know there's a large number of laptop issues out there. By the way, I did not intend to talk about Show Rovo or anything, but it just showed up in here. So Rovo will be a different webinar. Anyway, getting back to the Atlassian intelligence portion, I would probably go in here, find my highest volume tickets. I would go through them, find, these are all auto-generated by automations on the back end for demo data. But I would go in, find all of the different ways that people said they were having this issue, and then go create a knowledge article that showed them how to solve this problem. Could be a sticky power button, could be something else they need to check. And then I would have them mark it yes or no. And just through continued refinement, try to get that call avoidance and try to get it so people are not needing to get to a human all the time. Couple of the things we haven't talked about. There are some statistics that are kept in here. So when I go into my intents, one can see the conversations resolved, the CSAT score, and how many matched intents. Now, this is the basic stats. I actually had this in here before, which is why it's showing up as 4 of them. You notice reset password has none, and that's because the statistics on this they need to catch up. It's on a polling thing. So after a number of time that will update, and this is not completely set up yet. The next step is to integrate this with Teams and Slack. And that's where conversations will come in. And I have no conversation data because right now this only shows for Slack, not for Teams, but we will get more and more integration on that. Ideally, in the end, you'll be able to go into a team, um, say, hey, I need help to reset a password. Atlassian will return you the article showing you how to do it. And we'll have a lot more call avoidance on that sort of thing. All right, I'm gonna check the chat for questions. And that, in a nutshell, is the virtual agent. I know we had this scheduled for an hour, but I got through it pretty quickly. Since we did have an hour, if anybody wants me to go through anything else, or if they think I did not explain something well, I would love that feedback because I'm hugely self critical when it comes to doing demos. If you have anything, drop in the chat or come off mute and let me know. Laura, Jack, is there anything you think I missed? Yes, we can provide steps in the article. So when you are in this editor, like if I go into the reset password one, any of these, like you can make these boxes kind of long actually. So instead of linking to this, I could just put the entire article here if I wanted to, or I could type steps they need to take, or I could even ask a series of yes, no questions and building like a big tree structure saying, did you do this thing first, then the next, and then the next? So for example, if somebody was troubleshooting a computer not turning on, you don't want the technician to go through the easy 5 steps, right? Like, is it plugged in? Is the power switch on? Is the power switch on the monitor on? Et cetera, et cetera. I would probably have them do those in a flow like this first. And actually, now that you've asked that question, I'm going to do that exact thing next time I do a demo because that I did not think of that until now. But yes, you can easily do everything just right in here if you wanted to. Are there any other questions out there? Okay. Well,
Yeah. So that I think that'll wrap us up for today. If anyone has questions or would like additional demos, conversations with our team, here's some contact information. Feel free to reach out our way. And we hope you'll be able to join us for future sessions on deep dives into JSM functionality. Thanks so
and I
much for
will
your time, Bill.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing. I would expect Atlassian to be expanding and improving this as time goes on, but right now it's still pretty powerful. So, all right.
Thanks everyone for joining.